Okay, so I'm going to continue with nationalism, and I'm going to finish nationalism today. And on Monday, I'm going to start with imperialism, okay? And hopefully, I will have enough time to get into some international regimes. We'll see how that works. But on Monday, we're going to do a longer session, okay? Because I can't do the second hour today, Gelin. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to do the second hour today because there are people who have other classes today. So on Monday, please mark it in your calendars that I'm going to keep you here a little bit longer than 5:30. Okay. So we will probably be leaving here at 6 o'clock. A little late, but it's necessary for the final. Okay. Consider it as a bonus, okay, for you before the final. Yes. So I don't know what to say. So just consider it that way. All right. So we started talking about what really the problem was with nationalism. But before getting into that more, I want to talk about the alternative explanations of nationalism. Guys, I gave you Ernst Gellner, and you had in your reader his chapters from his infamous book, and Nations and Nationalism. And you've learned Gellner, but Gellner is not the only person who studies nationalism, obviously. And there are others who also look at nationalism. And they have different opinions on what causes nationalism, what leads to nationalism. Okay? And when Gellner talked about nationalism as a natural phenomenon, a sociological phenomenon that takes place as a result of modernization, which stems from industrialization in societies, these alternative explanations will look at other variables. So the variable Gellner is looking at is industrialization and modernization, and how that actually shifts the society, and how a glue is needed to get the society together. These guys will be looking at nationalism from a more, well, from a different perspective. Let's just say from a different perspective. Okay? So Gellner emphasized industrialization, and he emphasized migration. Remember? Social mobility, literacy, increase in communication, all these things that are the results of industrialization. And he said that this is a process that will be experienced in countries sooner or later. You industrialize, you modernize, and you expect this kind of a process to take place. Well, Eric Hobsbawm, one of the people that I'm going to look at, Eric Hobsbawm look at things differently. He believes that nationalism is not really a natural ideology, okay? And he believes that it is a man-made ideology to manipulate people. How do we manipulate people? In the beginning of the class, before the camera was on, Mehmet was telling me, oh, I look like, you know, you look like a student now. That is manipulation, yeah. for the finals sake. To tell me that I look good, or to tell any professor that she or he looks very good is an attempt at manipulation, okay? So don't take manipulation as an evil thing, okay? I know that when I say manipulation, most people will think that it's evil. You know, it's not good. You know, you're trying to force someone into thinking or doing something, right?
I'd say encouragement.
Encouragement. Okay, okay. You could, to be more politically correct, you could say encouragement. But manipulation is manipulation. You have someone or you have people that you want to behave differently. Okay. How can I manipulate the students?
Grades.
Okay, I can actually, I can manipulate you by saying that I'm going to give you a bonus, that by saying that I'm going to give you a better grade. Okay, so there are types of manipulation. How can you manipulate the society? Yes.
Generally, competition manipulates all human society.
Competition?
Competition is most important part of manipulation.
Okay, so...
Because people generally rival between each other.
Okay, so are you saying that human beings in their nature, they compete with each other because there's well, sure, everybody's performance and things will be different, right? So in our nature, maybe we like to compete with one another. So you're saying that different groups will compete with one another, and you can actually manipulate one group against the other group by actually using different ideologies. That is definitely something to consider, yes.
An example?
Sure.
I can give an example related to exam. I study hard to exam, your exam, but Kıvanç don't study exam, but Kıvanç's grades is more than.
Is better than your grade. Hypothetically, I did not enter your grades yet. Okay, okay. I don't want any misunderstandings here. So this is a hypothetical example, okay? And so if I actually use your grade against his to manipulate you and to maybe force you to study more, that might be a type of manipulation. How would a statesman manipulate the society? Yes.
Convince the society that they offer protection and benefits.
Okay, I can say, if you do this, I'll offer you protection. So that's, you know, I'll provide security. But if you don't do this, let me give you an example. If you don't give me soldiers, I can't protect you. So is conscription then, in that sense, a type of manipulation? Well, from this perspective, yes. Okay? Because you're saying if each and every one of you don't serve in the military for about a year, I won't be able to protect you. Okay? So that is indeed elite manipulation from that perspective. Yes?
If you make people believe that they are under threat every time, by, for example, by the other countries, you can easily manipulate them.
Okay, if I say, I think we actually started talking about this before. If I say, you know, we are in such a location that we can be attacked by our neighbors anytime, any moment, then okay, you're trying to get the rally around the flag effect, okay? So if I wanted to manipulate by using security and security threats, I would make you believe that everyone is out there to get you. I would almost put you in a situation where you are paranoidly looking for enemies everywhere, okay? So nationalism is then used, is an ideology that is used to manipulate the society according to Eric Hobsbawm's thinking, according to his argument, okay? So he's not saying that it's a natural phenomenon like Gellner says, okay, like Gellner argues. According to Gellner, no one is trying to manipulate anyone. This is the natural result of industrialization, where people become alienated from other people and the society and the state. Okay? But differently from that, Eric Hobsbawm says a nation is an invented tradition, and nationalism is an invented ideology to bring people together so that the elite can actually profit from it, okay? So in this argument, the elite does not manipulate you for the sake of you. They manipulate you because they would like to be in power, And by manipulating you, they'll stay in power. Okay? So this is quite different than Gellner's argument, and it is quite interesting. This is a very much studied argument, Hobsbawm's argument. And some scholars would show that Germany before Second World War actually became very nationalist because the elite actually manipulated people, especially the young people, in schools. Okay? Remember, I was telling you that I could make you believe in nihilism, right? There was this ideology, no one knows what it is about, but it is definitely about me. And I was telling you that if I could make all of you nihilists by the end of the semester, you know, we could take classes forever, and then maybe we could be a nation one day if we actually conquer our own territory. Bill Kant won't let that. So in that sense, guys, if I start manipulating you in school, well, you should be younger actually, but still though, I mean, it's easier to manipulate the younger people, the youth, compared to you guys. But still, in school, especially in public schools, manipulation of the youth by the elite in Germany before Second World War is given as an example of this. Okay? And this example is important because you see examples of it everywhere. There are arguments in Turkey that says, you know, our public school system, well, actually, we had public school system only at the time, probably. After the 1980 coup, also used the schools for socialization and the idea of how the coups were necessary for the nation and, you know, for the continuation of the nation. So there are those who argue that our school system has been quite militarist in the past, and that's changing today. So there are also scholars who look at Latin America, and they argue that elite has manipulated Latin American school systems as well. There are so many examples of this that, that scholars that study Hobsbawm's argument give about elite manipulation. So examples are abundant. They're out there. Okay? So the statesmen, those who, well, who do we call elites? Those who are ruling in the state. Okay? So the elites then create a myth of nation, according to this, this idea. And they create this myth not only for the sake of the nation, but also to be able to rule the country for a long time. I think we have mentioned this before, right? In the international system, power is something that most actors will not want to let go of if they once have it, okay? So if you are in a position of power, it's very difficult to let go of that power. So if you are a politician, elections are important for you because you want to be re-elected. If you are, if you're a professor, actually, you know, you have also a sense of power, and it's a nice sense of power. So most people will not want to let go of it. That's why we have professors that stay in the job for a very long time. Okay? So I can give you examples from all, you know, different sectors of business. You know, if you are a manager, you will want to stay as one as long as possible as well. So all these examples shows us that the elite of any sector, of any business, including the state, think of the state as a business, will want to stay in power, okay? So according to Hobsbawm, there will be the creation of the myth of a nation. And in that nation, remember, commonalities will be emphasized. We've mentioned this before. So the differences, such as ethnic differences, language differences, race differences, these will be pushed aside, and what will be emphasized is the commonalities, okay? The common characteristics of the people living in the state. So the myth will use ceremonies. Okay? In the US, you have 4th of July celebrations. You know, they're very nice. I've seen a couple of them, and they are very effective. I'm not an American, but I felt, wow, this is really cool, you know, this is really nice. And in Turkey, there are other ceremonies such as the Republic, you know, the celebration of the Republic kind of ceremonies. In France, there are other ones. There are certain days, national days for each country, for each state. So according to Hobsbawm, all these days or ceremonies, celebrations, rituals, they are things that are used to make the nation get together and to make the nation excited about being a nation. Okay? So you're actually creating the nation in the beginning, and then you're recreating it. And this recreation process continues. Okay? It's a never-ending process. That's why militarism may not be as strong an ideology as nationalism is. Okay? Because nationalism can be used and should be used again and again and again, so that the nation will feel that togetherness, that rally around the flag effect, at least once a year in those national holidays, in those rituals. Okay? So those rituals are, and symbols. Tell me a symbol that can be manipulated.
The Statue of Liberty.
Okay. Twin Towers, well, okay, so the flag. Can we, in Turkey, it's forbidden to wear the flag, right? Yes. Or it's forbidden to step on the flag.
Oh, use it as an underwear.
Okay, well, absolutely. And I was surprised in the US, there are no such bans, right? So you can actually wear the flag as a t-shirt. And so in Turkey's case, the flag is a symbol of the independence war and the blood that was shed. That's why it's all so red, right? And you know, the crescent and the star has also a meaning as well. You know, they're basically the shadows on the blood of all those people who died in the independence war. So all these symbols in this way of thinking is quite important to manipulate the public and to make the public stay together, believe in a common cause, believe in a nation, in one nation, that is. Okay? So from that perspective, the elites are motivated in several ways. They're not only motivated to do what's best for them to stay in power, but also they're trying to cement the society, keep the society together. They're also trying to defend against competing ideologies. Like you said before, there are many different competing ideologies in one state and in the society. Religion might be one of those ideas, one of these ideologies that, or institutions that the state will feel that it's competing against. In that sense, nationalism is an ideology, very strong ideology, to use against religious doctrines and religious ideologies. You said communism. Actually, interestingly, Stalin, during the Second World War, and you know, he's the leader of a communist country, he uses nationalism to actually motivate his soldiers, because communism doesn't really motivate the soldiers to die. Okay? So it's a very, nationalism is a very strong ideology, and communism can compete with it, but at times of war, nationalism is a better tool to manipulate your soldiers. A good tool, again, might be religion. You can actually tell your people that you will go to heaven if you know, fight in this war. if you actually are able to manipulate people by saying that, that's also very powerful, okay? But right now, we're not getting into religion as an ideology. We're talking about nationalism. So I can tell you that from this perspective, nationalism is one of the most powerful ideologies to manipulate people by the elite. Allows greater extraction of resources. Now tell me what extraction of resources is. I asked this in the exam as well. And I've seen all sorts of weird answers. So
the utilization of the resources.
Is it?
Taxation.
Taxation. Extraction of resources means, okay, those who smile, you know, I know why you're smiling. So extraction of resources means the state extracts resources from you, the society. They tax you. Remember, we talked about this quite a lot. I need you. I'm the queen and I need you. Why do I need you? Because I need to tax you. Without your taxes, I can't fight. I won't have an army. I won't be able to fight in wars. If I don't fight in wars, I won't be able to establish my own sovereign state. I just told you the answer to the exam question. Okay? So in that sense, nationalism helps you to extract more resources. Remember France? We talked about France. And we talked about France and Prussia. We said it was possible to trigger a revolution in France because the taxes were raised by the king at peacetime.
And the tax farmers were harsh.
And the taxes were very harsh on the farmers, right? So these guys actually revolted against the taxation, against the economic situation, against the extraction of resources. On the other hand, in Prussia, there was almost constantly wars going on. So as you increase the taxes during the war, because of the rally around the flag effect, you don't actually get a revolution. Okay, so in that sense, if you have nationalism as an ideology, if you use it to manipulate people, if you make people believe that you are the only one who can save the country, then you can actually extract greater resources. You can increase the taxes, no one really will object to it, okay? Especially if you manipulate using security threats, you know? We may be under attack any moment, kind of threats. Finally, of course, nationalism reinforces the legitimacy of the regime. So the elites, as long as they stay in power, they'll gain more. And I am talking about personal gains. I'm talking about your close environment and your close clique that supports you. They will gain as well. I'm just talking about, you know, the whole elite group to gain from being in power. And that is, you know, that is the rule of the game. That's what politics is all about, right? Sharing the gains. So the regime, though, needs to be legitimate. Who brings legitimacy? People. I'm actually right now getting into Weber's definition of the state, and people is something that some of you forgot to write in your answers in the exam. You need people in a state. And for nationalism, you need people, because that's who you are manipulating. Exactly, exactly. A lot of people forgot population in the definition of state, which we shouldn't, because it's the people that needs to be manipulated, okay? Why do you need to be legitimate in the eyes of the people? Because you want to stay in power. It's not possible if they don't believe that you are sincerely aiming for the benefits of the nation.
Legitimacy is just a pretext.
What do you mean?
I don't think that governments, I mean, at least dictators in totalitarian regimes, governments care about being legitimate. Therefore, the legitimacy is just...
Why would you say that? If they're not legitimate, they would be, in democracies, if they're not legitimate, they'll be voted off.
Yes, but they show themselves legitimate even though they are not legitimate sometimes.
Well, if you don't buy it, you can vote them out, right? Whatever the leader shows, whatever the leader pretends, if the leader is not legitimate, that leader will be voted out, right? Or, as in the cases of Arab Spring, there will be some kind of revolt. Or sometimes, for decades, there won't be any revolts, as in the case of the Arab Spring. But sooner or later, there will be change. So legitimacy is necessary. Guys, if you're not legitimate, let me tell you something. If as your professor in this classroom, I'm not legitimate, then you're not going to listen to me. You're not going to come here. You're not going to care. And probably you will either withdraw from the class or you will just do whatever you want. And in the end, no, you won't really care. Okay? So legitimacy for anyone who's working with a group of people, legitimacy is important. Okay? You have to have that legitimacy. You have to build that legitimacy in that sense. Now, there are other alternatives as well. Like I said, nationalism is a huge literature. Okay? You can study many different perspectives of nationalism. Another one that I'm going to mention is primordialism. Because in this one, people like Paul Bruss argue that nationalism, or the sense of being a nation, being part of a nation, comes from our instincts, so it's natural. So every individual is actually primordially, that means on a very basic level, is attached to their place of birth. That's why, you know, you live elsewhere, and many, many years later, you still want to die in your own country, in your own soil, okay, in your own land. Yeah. I don't know about that one. I've never heard of it. So primordial feelings is our feelings that come from inside, that are instinctive. There are even scholars who argue, I don't buy that argument, but there are scholars who argue that, that this emotional bond to your land where you were born comes from your genes.
Yeah, being this is something, or part of it, this I think, emotion, or in human psychology, it needs to being a part of something.
Absolutely, so it's belonging. Remember, we started the discussion of nationalism with loyalty and belonging. You come to Bilkent, you want to belong to something, a club, you know, a group. Find a friend, you know, find a group of friends. So it's argued that in the most basic level, you actually want to belong. But in this case, you actually belong, you feel that belonging to the place of birth, where you were born, okay? Even if you have never lived in where you were born, you have connection to that place, whatever that place is. So it's an emotional bond. And so this argument rejects, you know, the whole sociological argument of industrialization that Gellner makes. It also rejects the argument of elite manipulation. And it says, no matter if you went through industrialization, or no matter if the elite is manipulating you, you have this emotional bond to where you were born, to your state, to your nation. So it's kind of a bond that's not going to disappear, okay? In that sense, it's, you know, like I said, in the extreme it says it's genetic. If you don't take it to that extreme, it's quite instinctive that you feel bonded with other people. That's kind of how, or why, you know, we are close to our sisters and brothers and moms and dads, or our relatives. Even if we don't share much with them, we feel connected to them. And there might be something true about it. How I told you, or was it my other class? You know, my brother, my sister, and I actually fought a lot.
Yes, you told
Okay,
us.
I told you guys. So we beat each other a lot as we were growing up. And so, you know, you would actually, if a friend of mine actually decided to beat me, I don't think I would ever talk to that friend again, okay? Or anyone else. for that matter. But in the case of my brother and my sister, I forgave them a long time ago, and I was the youngest, so I was the one who got beaten a lot, right? Well, actually the most. Maybe my sister too. My brother kind of did not discriminate between us much. So in that sense, guys, I do kind of buy the argument that there's something instinctive about, you know, your brother, your sister, your close relatives. But I wouldn't take it as far as being closely linked to the whole nation. So in that sense, I'm not feeling that tied to you, Kıvanç. Don't get me wrong, but although we are all, you know, we all belong, except for our exchange students, we all belong to the same nation, I'm kind of doubting that we will all be feeling so close, that close with one another. But the argument here is you feel more close to the specific surroundings that you were born, okay? So maybe I feel closer to people of Mardin where I was born. I don't know. Maybe that's more like it instead of generalizing it to the whole country. But that's the argument, okay? That's an alternative argument. And there are many other arguments on nationalism. I picked the ones that are more interesting and the ones that are really strong in the literature. The first two were very strong in the literature. Okay, Hobsbawm and Gellner. And there are several others. There are Marxist arguments that say class relations actually has a lot to do with nationalism, why nationalism works, and how nationalism actually leads to exploitation of one class over another. Okay, so there are all these different alternatives that I'm not going to get into. So you're responsible from reading Gellner. So the main thing that I want you to learn is Gellner because it's in your readings as well. But also, I talked about Eric Hobsbawm. I did not assign you a reading for it, but the lecture notes will be sufficient for that. And also primordialism. And you don't really have to get into looking for what Marxism is saying, okay? You're not responsible from that. Any questions so far? So far, we looked at several ideologies. You know, we looked at cult of the offensive, militarism, and social Darwinism. And we said these three are very closely connected to wars that changed the international system forever, especially the First World War and also the Second World War. These two world wars have changed the system to a great extent. Empires collapsed. Decolonization started as a result of the Second World War. So the whole world was shaped because of these wars. And the ideologies, these three ideologies we talked about, actually combined together, led to these disastrous wars. Okay? In the same manner, I'm going to tell you that nationalism is an ideology that changed the international system a lot. Because, like I said, the other three ideologies are more temporary, or they have never actually been as popular as nationalism. So the whole nation never actually bought social Darwinism. There were people who bought into the idea of social Darwinism, but never the whole nation. In the case of nationalism, nationalism is a more popular ideology. Okay? In that sense, nationalism is easier to spread in the society because you're telling people that you belong to a nation without any differences. So you're emphasizing the commonalities. In social Darwinism, what do you emphasize? The differences between people. Okay? And there are many differences between people. So it's very difficult to catch a large number of people by emphasizing differences. You can have a small group that believe in social Darwinism. But in nationalism, you're actually saying, no matter what your ethnicity is, no matter what your financial situation is, no matter who you are, what language you're speaking, you are part of this nation. Do you see how binding this is? So you're actually bonding people with one another through commonalities. So you're actually kind of pushing away all these differences that separate people from one another, and you're actually talking about things to bring them together, okay? So nationalism can actually spread much easily in that sense. But at the same time, if you push people to nationalism too much, and if you turn nationalism into hyper-nationalism, now you are talking about trouble, okay? That's what we have seen in Yugoslavia. Hitler, actually, in Second World War's Germany, pushed people to nationalism. He had, all these rituals, all these school education to doctrinate people. And he taught people how they were treated wrongly, how they were mistreated by the end of the First World War. Okay? So Versailles Treaty was a disaster for Germany. And he taught people that. So the youth actually learned all these things about how other nations are enemies. Okay? So if you push the ideology of nationalism to hyper-nationalism, then you start alienating people from other states, nations. So you're creating your own nation, you're creating your own nationalist, very nationalist nation that starts hating everyone else. This goes all the way to xenophobia. What's xenophobia? Fear of foreigners, of strangers. Oh, that can go all the way to hatred of foreigners. So you start treating badly to foreigners. So once nationalism becomes hyper-nationalism, then you actually start getting into problems. And if you are an empire, within the empire, nationalism can backfire because different groups can create their own nationalisms. My best example is Ottoman Empire. You have different groups. You actually try to get them together in one ideal, but nationalism, different nationalisms, Greek nationalism, Serbian nationalism, Bulgarian nationalism, every single, or Arab nationalism, every single nationalism actually added to the process where the Ottoman Empire collapsed by the end of the First World War. Okay, so, all right, do I have more time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay. I'll do one more and then I'll let you go. So the collapse of empires then are very much related to nationalism. Remember what I was saying about the Westphalian founding fathers who came up with the norm of sovereignty and who believed that nationalism would actually be good, you know, or creating nations and states would actually be good for the international system. Well, they must have been in their graves quite disappointed.
After 140 years.
Yes, they must have been very disappointed that nationalism, the very thing that was supposed to keep a state together, actually led to the decline of empires. Okay? So that's the first problem that the system had to experience as a result of nationalism, collapse of empires. The second one is nationalism sometimes may harm minority groups and minority rights, because each minority might start feeling, well, actually, here's the thing. We haven't talked about patriotism versus nationalism. Maybe we should talk about that first. Until Monday, please think about what patriotism is and what nationalism is. Okay? What is the difference between patriotism and nationalism? They're different concepts. They're different things. So I want you to think about what the difference is. And depending on what that difference is, we're going to talk about how nationalism might actually hurt minority groups and countries. And then we're going to talk about diasporas, ethnic nationals abroad. We call them diasporas. And then we're going to talk about the timing of nationalism, how that affects the system. Okay?
We will think about nationalism and
Patriotism. What is patriotism as opposed to nationalism?
Love for the
Okay, it looks like you really need to actually think about it. Maybe don't do the Wikipedia search, but if you want, you can look into an article from JSTOR on it. If you feel like it in your weekend, if you feel so dedicated. If not, don't do any research. Just think about it. Okay? I want different ideas. By tomorrow, all the exams and the assignments will be in my office.
No?
So if you tomorrow. So if you want to see them by tomorrow, you can do that. Thank you.